road. The Milwaukee Bucks are your 2021 NBA championships, which warrants at least a golf clap from this fine program.
Well done, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Mike Budenholzer, and all of the great city of Milwaukee.
He's Tyler Fulghum. I'm Joe Fortenbaugh. This is your Wednesday edition of Bet. Former Alabama quarterback Greg McElroy in just a few minutes on how to bet the Alabama Crimson Tide this season. Some way too early predictions for the 2022 NBA season. And will Aaron Donald lead the NFL in sacks next season?
You say Aaron Donald?
Donald, his boy. Now, if you're into the Cowboys, if you're into the Buccaneers, betting on them, against them, or you just want to hear some analysis, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ESPN Sports Betting. Those are the two teams we will be covering during our two-a-day segment on Daily Wager today at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. You can also find all that stuff on YouTube. But for right now, time to go to work. Are you ready?
Yep.
Let it ride or cash out is the name of the game. A statement is fired your way. If you agree with that statement, you're letting it ride. If you disagree, you are cashing out. So let's begin right here. Let it ride or cash out. Currently a plus 165 underdog, TJ Dillashaw will upset Cory Sandhagen at UFC Fight Night this Saturday in Las Vegas.
I like Dillashaw, but I am going to cash out.
It out.
Okay, not only is Sandhagen the favorite for good reason, he's younger, he's got the height, length advantage. The ring rust concerns me. The octagon rust concerns me for Dillashaw, who has been away for a long time. And Sandhagen is trending in the right direction right now in terms of his outcomes fighting. So I like Dillashaw. If it was closer to 2 or 250, plus 250 for Dillashaw, it'd make me think a little more about making that bet. But I do think that Sandhagen actually stops Dillashaw and wins this matchup.
I am right there with you, and I'm going to fill in a little bit on the Socratic method notes that you just started laying out because there's a lot of great bullet points in there. Let's start with the money. TJ Dillashaw opened plus 150, but is now up to plus 165. Not a good sign. It means people are betting against him, and the bookmakers are adjusting. So why might they be booking or betting against him? Well, number one, he's 35 years old, and he hasn't fought in 30 months. He was defeated by Henry Cejudo 30 months ago, and then he tested positive for EPO, which earned him a 2-year suspension from the sport. So, how many fights was he using that for, right? You got to wonder, what was your game with EPO and what was your game without it? Now, after 30 months, you're trying to come back against a fighter in Sandhagen who's 29 years old and suffered a defeat to Aljamain Sterling at UFC 250 in June of 2020. But since then has fought 2 more times, and since then has recorded 2 more wins. He has bounced back nicely. He's more in form. He's younger. I would side with him as well. I'm not betting with Dillashaw. Number 2. Let it ride or cash out. Currently your co-favorite alongside Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns at plus 750 to lead the NFL in sacks. Aaron Donald will not lead the NFL in sacks.
How dare you say that about Aaron Donald not leading the NFL in sacks? Obviously, I'm cash. No, I'm going to let it ride here.
Oh, look at that.
Now, I do think there's about a 90% chance, barring injury, that he finishes in the top 3. And one thing working in his favor this year is the offense with Matt Stafford. Despite the loss of Cam Akers, remember running back's the most replaceable position. I feel for Cam Akers. He was going to be a stud, but most replaceable position.
Terrible
offense. Terrible injury, especially for his future. Achilles injuries for a running back can be damning for your career, and that's what is worst here. But this offense, even with that injury, by just adding Stafford instead of Goff, should be more explosive, should score more points, and might have more leads, big leads for Aaron Donald and that defense to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. Obvious passing down. So that's working in Donald's favor. However, you look at that Cleveland Browns team, and they're going to be just as good. Probably build a lot of leads with their run game and having Odell Beckham Jr. back. And there's more help around Myles Garrett on that defense. Maybe even the same for TJ Watt after they just added Melvin Ingram, who still, I think, has some juice left. So Von Miller is back as well, and we know how good he is. So edge rushers, easier to get sacks than interior guys. Donald does it with the same efficiency, but there's just too many other options here. I think you'll have similar type of environments for ample sack production. That's why I will let it ride.
And I will be agreeing with you on this one. And it is not an indictment of Aaron Donald. In fact, what we should be looking at is quarterback pressures, not quarterback sacks. Pressures are more important, but we're focusing on sacks here. Donald's a beast, but let's look through history, right? The last 20 years, your NFL sack leader averages 18.2 sacks per year. Averages 18.2. We have never, in the last 15 years, or 20 years, I should say, had a sack leader with fewer than 15 sacks. Aaron Donald's been a beast, but he's recorded 14 or more sacks just one time in 7 years. He doesn't really hit this number much. The one time he did it, he had 20 and a half in 2018, and he led the league. But this requires a lot of sacks. He gets a healthy amount consistently every single year, but not this many. I would rather take a shot at this price. Based on everything we just laid out and what you need to get to, if he can stay healthy, Nick Bosa from the 49ers is 16 to 1. And with Javon Kinlaw, second-year defensive tackle out of South Carolina, really coming into his own, getting ready to take that next step forward, commanding attention on the inside. Bosa should get some one-on-ones, but the injuries are a huge concern. Injuries are a huge concern here.
I might tail that. Aaron Donald's teammate, Andrew Whitworth, was on, I believe, Chris Long's podcast and said the most impressive physical human he's ever had to block was Nick Bosa. The strength that he has at that young age, once his technique catches up, he is going to be an animal.
All right, let a rider cash out number 3 after making it to the conference finals for the first time since the 1993 season. The Phoenix Suns will not make it to the conference finals next season.
And we got a new question, so I got to move the old graphic. And once again, I'm going to let it ride.
All right.
Even though CP3 is my boy. Is he even going to be back in Phoenix? That's a big question. Even if he is back in Phoenix, he's going to be 37 years old. He was great this year, but he will be a year older. And we should not forget the context of Phoenix reaching the NBA Finals. They played LA in the first round. Was LA even close to 100%?
No, they were not.
No, Anthony Davis couldn't play, and LeBron James was indicating, and by his play it looked like it, maybe it's Father Time though, that the ankle injury was not quite 100%. Then you get to the Western Conference Finals against the LA Clippers. Didn't see Kawhi Leonard the final few games of that series. That obviously is a big benefit for Phoenix. So keep in mind the context. I think this is a good team. They'll be back in the playoffs. But barring another catastrophic injury situation for some other favorites, I think we'll be on the outside looking in for the NBA Finals.
I'm with you on that one. The question is, will they not make it to the finals or make it? We're debating whether or not to get to the finals, right? But there's no odds here. We're not getting odds. It's an even money bet, so it's an obvious pass when you figure the Lakers have better odds to win the West, the Warriors have better odds to win the West, and you're probably going to be tied with a team like the Jazz, considering you're tied with the Jazz for the finals odds as of right now. So if I'm being asked even money, I'm not even getting odds. Of course I'm going to pass on this. The Lakers are going to be better. The Warriors are going to be better. Not sure about the Clippers, but you also have Jamal Murray coming back from the Nuggets. They're going to be better. The Jazz, you would think at some point might figure something out, but probably won't. But ultimately the Jazz and the Mavericks are coming on strong as well. There's a lot to figure out. This was Phoenix's shot. Everyone will say, oh, it's a young team. It's got plenty of time left. I don't know. I don't think so. It's unfortunate. It was a good run, but that one went to the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's go ahead and peer into the future when we're talking about the NBA and look at some of the odds for the 2022 season when it comes to your potential champion. And at the top of the list, no surprise, you'll see the Brooklyn Nets as your favorite at plus 225 here at Caesars William Hill. The Lakers following suit at 4-1. Bucks and Giannis 9-1. The Warriors, who have been awful the last 2 years, find themselves at 10-1. And then it's the Suns and the Jazz. Question number 1 for you. Are you surprised Milwaukee, who just won the championship, has the third best odds behind the Nets and the Lakers?
No, I'm not. Because, again, we have to consider the context, taking nothing away from what Milwaukee did.
You're about to take away from what Milwaukee did.
All you can do is cross the bridge that is there. Some bridges have a bunch of holes you got to hop over. Some bridges are nice and easy and short. But this particular bridge could have been more difficult for Milwaukee to get through. Most notably playing Brooklyn without James Harden and Kyrie Irving, and then getting a Phoenix team in the Western Conference. When we go back to the beginning of this year, Phoenix probably would have been like the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th team that you would have picked to come out of the West. Now, it takes nothing away from Phoenix and what they did because they overachieved relative to our expectation, but some other teams underachieved, not because they were bad, solely because of injury. Denver, you mentioned, without Jamal Murray. LeBron and the Lakers, AD. Kawhi and the Clippers. So if these things correct, it will be harder for Milwaukee to come out of the East and or win. If they don't correct, and Milwaukee gets the benefit of having their big three healthy again, then they can absolutely do it, and their odds should be shorter. But we have to consider the context of the championship.
Completely agree. Bookmaking 101. If the Bucks and their odds come down because you want to make them a favorite, someone else's odds have to go up. And if that's going to be the Lakers or the Nets, you're going to find yourself in a dicey situation as a bookmaker because of liability. The books know people want to bet on the super team in Brooklyn and the super team in LA. If you know that's coming, you don't want to give them a great price because it means you could potentially lose more money. You install them as the favorites because they're very, very good. They have a very good chance of running deep into the playoffs, and because people are going to be betting them. Giannis and the Bucks, great run. How many people are going to come back and bet them? Probably somewhere around third most, given everything we know. So bookmaking 101 as we lay out some lessons and then find a way to give you losing picks probably later in the show. All right. So we were talking about the injuries to the Nets and the Lakers and everything that helped set up the paths for Milwaukee and for Phoenix. Speaking of injuries, do you trust the Nets at this price as the overwhelming favorites given their injury history?
I trust them as much as I trust any team to have injury luck of either good fortune or bad fortune. It's just not something you can really control. And you can say, well, Harden is more injury prone or he chokes, or you can say Kyrie is soft mentally. You can say all those things, but bottom line is this is something you cannot predict. There's no predictability to this. It is pure randomness, and randomness plays a part in deciding outcomes when it comes to team sports and individual sports as well. So I trust them as much as anyone. What impressed me most in this NBA postseason was they exceeded my expectation defensively. Even without Kyrie, even without Harden, they were a better defensive team. They made stops when it mattered. They just didn't have the horsepower on the other end to compete with the Milwaukee team. If they can replicate that defensive effort in the postseason, doesn't matter in the regular season, but in the postseason, if they can find that replicated or get better and have an available Harden and Irving at 100%, I think they are where they are for good reason, because they overachieved last year without those two relative to their defense, and just having a Durant, I thought they'd get blown off the floor. They almost won that series against Milwaukee.
Good team. Very good team. And I understand the price. I would not play it. There are too many variables.
That needs to be added as well.
When you give me this price at this point in time, this far away from the finals, and you say, do you want to bet them? I better have a lot of security in that wager. Like with Alabama, the price they're at to win I have a lot of security there. I know that they have a good coach. I know they win lots of games. They have lots of talent. Here, we have issues with health, as we've already mentioned. We have issues on defense. Better in the playoffs, but will it be good enough next year? Then we also have the situation, Kyrie Irving, do we trust him?
Right.
To be able to have his head on straight, to be able to focus, to be able to deliver when they need him every single night? Are these guys going to have the chemistry issues that you need, or not have the chemistry issues that you need in order to advance deep into the playoffs? There are so many variables here. I think Philadelphia is going to be good, if not better. I think Milwaukee will still be good. I think Boston's going to get better. Atlanta's getting better. The Knicks are getting better. I haven't even named everybody yet. And here we are. Miami could be getting better. It's going to be a tougher East. At that price, no, not interested. I need way more security at that price, and I'm not getting it there. So that leads us to the other side of the spectrum, and the team we just mentioned, the Atlanta Hawks. 30-1, given the fact that they went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. 30-1. They're tied for the 10th best odds. Are you surprised to see them so low?
A little bit, but I do understand, because I think this is a market that is considering the circumstances of Atlanta making it to the Eastern Conference Finals and being a team that kind of overachieved. I think they are much better than I thought going into this season. But again, if everything else is going to be equal, if we can guarantee that health for Brooklyn, if we can see that health for Philadelphia and all these, there are still 4 or 5 teams I think are better than them on paper going into this season in the Eastern Conference. A team I would like more because they have an MVP. They've done it, at least getting that far a season ago. They had some, is Denver in the Western Conference. I think they should kind of be, Denver is justifiably 25-1, but I think Denver should be kind of closer to the 20-1 if you're going to move Atlanta up to 25-1. I think both those teams are a little bit undervalued, but I look at the Hawks this year as the Eastern Conference version of Phoenix. Yeah, we thought they'd make some strides, get a little bit better, maybe sneak into the playoffs. Grossly exceeded expectation, but consider the context. If everything else had been equal, I don't think Atlanta makes it this far. I don't think Phoenix made it as far as they did this year. So I'll bake in some regression for both teams next year.
Atlanta has a lot to get excited about, a lot. But
yes,
to see them at 30-1 with the 10th best odds shouldn't surprise anybody at all. You have to remember something. Again, when we talk about liability, how many people are going to look at the Hawks and think this was a flash in the pan? They were very good for the majority of the season. They fired their head coach this season. And then late in the year, they bring in Nate McMillan. They go on a great run. They get to the playoffs. They hammer the Knicks. They hammer the Sixers. They make some noise against the Bucks. Great season. Not saying it can't happen again, but because it came out of left field, they have had one playoff win in the last 5 years, I believe it was, prior to this season. Some people are going to look at that as a flash in the pan, and as a result, they're not going to be interested in betting them at 15-1, 18-1, 21-1. You put them at 30-1, you might entice some action if you're a bookmaker. And with a stacked Eastern Conference, how high can you really put them given everything else that's going on? Now, from Southern hospitality on the basketball court to Southern hospitality on the gridiron, college football is less than 6 weeks away. Less than 6 weeks to week 0, which gives us a small handful of games before we get to week 1, which gives us this slate. Look at that. From Thursday through Monday, we are loaded with action. Penn State, my alma mater, will be at Wisconsin, no doubt losing that game to start 0-1, so I can keep with the trend of losing with the Sixers, the Phillies, the Eagles, and the Flyers. LSU going to look to bounce back from last year's disappointing season at UCLA. Be careful there. UCLA and Chip Kelly going to look to make some noise early in the season. Notre Dame laying 9.5 against Florida State. Can the Seminoles get back on track? And then the two marquee attractions, Georgia versus Clemson in Charlotte, and of course Alabama laying a huge number against Miami. For more on the upcoming college football season, we welcome in Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback, now ESPN College Football analyst. Greg, we appreciate the time. Alabama's win total for this season is set at 11.5, and for those who don't know, the postseason does not count towards these type of wagers. So essentially, an overbet means you think Alabama is going undefeated at 12-0. The Tiger returning just 33% of their offensive production from last year's title team. Do you like Alabama to run the table?
I personally think, guys, that it's just entirely too big of an ask. When you look at the SEC and the SEC West more specifically, that league really has improved at almost every single spot, especially the division, man. A&M, even though they have a lot of departures, they should be better. Bama goes to College Station and plays at Texas A&M. A lot of people think Bama's looking at about a 2-touchdown favorite there. It's pretty remarkable, but when you really dive into it, I take the over. Nick Saban has gotten to a point now with his roster where they are so deep, so versatile, so good on the offensive side as far as the skill positions are concerned, and then couple that with the fact that the defense returns almost entirely intact from a year ago, in which, yes, it wasn't the best Alabama defense we've ever seen, but it's an Alabama defense that played poorly in only 2 games. So I actually would shockingly take the over at 12-0. I really think they're going to get there because the gap between them and everybody else still is about as wide as the Grand Canyon.
That's, again, a big ask, but Nick Saban's certainly the man to do it. If, Greg McElroy, you found a loss on that schedule, where would it be to hit the under?
I would say A&M. So if I were to play it, I'd go 12-0. I'd take Bama. I'd bet the over, depending on how much juice we're looking at. Take the over at 12-0, and then I'd sprinkle a little bit on Texas A&M money line, especially if there are that 14-point dog. October in College Station still be really hot. It'll be an absolutely crazy environment, and Jimbo Fisher hasn't been real competitive against Nick Saban at any of his former stops, Florida State and at now Texas A&M. He struggled in every game against Nick Saban. However, this team has been building to this moment. Yeah, they finished 4th last year. It was great, 9-1, a lot to be proud of, but this team might in fact be more talented, and with potentially, with Kellen Mond's departure at quarterback, they could actually be a little more explosive at quarterback with Haynes King, the likely starter, who's got track speed that runs a 10-second 100-meter dash. So that team's going to be very dangerous. So if I had to find one, that'd be the one where I'd sprinkle some money line on the Aggies.
All right, Greg, as you well know, this era of college football has been dominated by your alma mater, Alabama, and of course Clemson and Dabo Swinney in the ACC. Bama, the shortest odds to win a national title. Clemson right behind them. Clemson opens up with a barn burner in Charlotte against the Georgia Bulldogs. The Tigers are 4-point favorites. How are you approaching maybe wagering on that game?
I take the points, and I love Clemson this year, and I love DJ Uiagalelei, who's stepping into what were the enormous shoes of Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. But DJ, we were there actually, saw his first start in the face of adversity against Boston College. Clemson was about a 21-point favorite after Trevor Lawrence tested positive. I think everybody and their brother thought Boston College might have been the play with the points that day, not knowing what to expect from DJ Uiagalelei, but he responded in what was pretty remarkable fashion. Ended up getting the win. It wasn't pretty, but he found a way. And then the following week, he goes to South Bend, starts in a very difficult environment against what was a playoff team in Notre Dame, and he gave them a chance. They ended up losing that game, but they didn't lose it because of his performance. So I love Clemson this year. I think they're probably going to be a team that's at worst 11-1, but I actually think they would lose that first game. I'd take Georgia. I'd actually go money line, but if you're going to give me 4, I'll take the 4.
All right, another big Week 1 matchup takes us to the Big Ten, where Wisconsin is going to be laying 4.5 against Penn State. What are the chances the Nittany Lions can spring the upset at Camp Randall in the opening week?
Highly probable. I actually really like Penn State this year, and a lot of people say, well, they started 0-5 last year. You know how difficult it is to get a team that has to test every single day, that starts the season 0-5 to buy in the second half of the season? Well, that's exactly what James Franklin was able to do. They actually come into this season with a 4-game winning streak. 4-5 last year, and granted, yes, no one's going to sit there and hang a banner in Happy Valley, but I think it showed the commitment level of the players on the roster. You also look, too, at the performance of Wisconsin in 2020. There's a lot of buildup. There's a lot of hype surrounding the Badgers. I don't see it. At this point, I think Wisconsin is still one of those teams that, yes, they've advanced to a certain extent in trying to open their offense just a little bit behind new quarterback Graham Mertz, who's athletic and capable at the position. But I don't think they have a lot of explosive playmakers. Whereas Penn State, a lot of explosiveness on that offensive side of the football. So I like Penn State to win this game outright, especially, and we don't know yet, we think it will be full capacity in Camp Randall in Madison, Wisconsin. But if it's not, then that home field becomes essentially a wash. It might actually favor the road team if there's crickets there in Camp Randall. So I like Penn State in this matchup. I'd take the points. I actually feel decent about them pulling the win off outright.
All right, Greg, let's move finally out to the West Coast Pac-12 Conference. Oregon, the favorites to win that conference, plus 250. They have a guy in Kayvon Thibodeau who very well could be the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. But the conference specifically has not had a lot of success in this college football playoff era. Only 2 teams from the Pac-12 have gone to the college football playoff. Washington, the most recent, 4 or 5 years ago. Do you think this year a Pac-12 team is able to get in?
I think there's a really good chance, but it's going to require there being a misstep early in the season by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Oregon, as you referenced, they actually go to Columbus in week 2 and have a chance now with Oregon. They actually have a lot of pieces back off their roster last year, and yes, it was not a good year for the Pac-12 in general. Anyone that's using the 2020 season as a barometer of where the Pac-12 is, don't. You're wasting your time. There was not a single meaningful game played in the Pac-12 last year because of their start date. And as far as the playoffs are concerned, you really can't use any game that last year as a barometer for potential success. But if you look at what Oregon did 2 years ago, they're a physical football team. They are a team that actually now has a good identity offensively. Joe Moorhead, their offensive coordinator, formerly of Penn State, and then was at one point the head coach at Mississippi State. He's got a good quarterback-friendly scheme that should take some of the pressure off of the quarterback position. So I actually really like Oregon this year. I think the Pac-12 North is very gettable. Washington also has a good test early on against Michigan. I think Washington has a real chance to win that game. And I think Oregon, even if they lost to Ohio State, they would still have the meat on the bone in the schedule to be able to get back up into striking distance if they win the Pac-12 crown. So I actually like Oregon to be in the mix, but it's going to require a misstep by Ohio State or somebody in the Big Ten.
College football analyst Greg McElroy, kind enough to share some insights with us here on Bet. Greg, great stuff. We appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
All right, break out the pitching wedge and try to lay it up there nicely from 100 yards. It's time to talk some golf. Par 3, the 3M Open from TPC Twin Cities in Blaine, Minnesota this week. Par 71. Course plays to about 7,400 yards. Your defending champion is Michael Thompson. The field includes only 8 of the top 50 in the world, 26 of the top 100 in the world. Your 3 favorite bets for this event? Go.
All right, let's start with Tony Fee now. Where he be now? I'm going to take him at even money in a tournament matchup against Louis Oosthuizen. Why? Not a major.
Yeah. Means Louis will probably win.
Does Louis? No, Louis not going to show up. Louis is going to finish like 34th or 40th. He is a big game hunter, a South African big game hunter. Finau, on the other hand, doesn't have that pedigree at the major, so he gets geeked up for events like this. Weaker field, easy course to get. Winning score will be very, very low, 20, 22, 24 under par. So I like Louis with a little bit of a letdown emotionally after his letdown emotionally at the Open Championship, having to come all the way across the pond to a country that's not really his and just be like, all right, I'm going to mail it in here at the 3M Open.
How many more Louis letdowns are we going to have? And I'm angry because I had him this past weekend. It's like at some point you got to change your process because your process consistently results in falling apart on Sunday. Right? Like, you got to change the approach.
I understand, but I think the wiser thing to do is just consider how good Louis has been to have all these second-place finishes. It's hard to finish second in a major championship. Even harder to win. A name that we may not know, but a name that I have learned for this tournament specifically, Mito Pereira. top 40 for Mito Pereira at plus 110.
Can I have country of origin, please?
I'm gonna have to look that up for you because I don't know that off the top of my head. He just earned PGA Tour status by, get this, winning back-to-back weeks on the Korn Ferry Tour, and around those back-to-back wins, 5 top 10s in 6 events. Form is great. Came over to the PGA Tour, missed the cut in his first event, but then finished 34th and 5th at last week's Barbasol, the alternate field event, while everyone else was across the pond at the Open. So this guy's in really good form, and I just need a top 40 finish from someone who has been golfing the ball well. Mito Pereira. I'll look up his country of origin when you get to the tee box for your part.
Thank you.
And then maybe one of my favorite bets, worth a sprinkle for the outright win. Going to be in my daily fantasy lineups. Emiliano Grillo. At plus 140 to go top 20. Now, why do we like Grillo? We know his style. One of the best pure ball strikers, iron players in the game. His putting kind of looks like me when he's out there on the green. So, first in the field in strokes gained on approach. 5th in the field or birdie or better percentage, in birdie or better percentage. He is someone who will take advantage of these wide fairways and have nice targets to throw darts at. If he can putt well, he can win this thing. If his putting's just average, I think he can still get a top 20 finish. By the way, last year at this event, finished T3. He's got some history at this course and at this event.
Strong conservative card this week. I like it. I'll get a little loose early on with my first one. Matthew Wolff to win at 28-1. Wolff won here in 2019 and finished tied for 12th here last year. So he likes the course. He knows the event. He performs quite well. He was also tied for 15th at the U.S. Open recently, so the recent form is relatively solid. At 28-1, being a previous winner who plays well here and is currently playing well now everywhere on tour, I'm surprised that with only 8 of the top 50 in the field this week, you'd be getting a price of 28-1. I've been thinking more around 20-1, 18-1, 28-1. I'm in America. I'll take Matthew Wolff. Number 2, Charles Schwartzel, plus 200 just to make the top 20. He was tied for 3rd here last year, so again, we have some horse for the course success. Quietly having a huge year is the South African. Tied for 26th at the Masters, tied for 3rd at the Byron Nelson, top 20s at the Wells Fargo and the U.S. Open. He has played quite well this year. We get 2-1 that he makes the top 20. Let's do it. And then finally, it's a 1-round matchup play. So for tomorrow, 1 round is all that matters. Hank Lebioda.
Yes, sir.
Not Italian. I don't know why I put
he's
the
American
spin on it. Hank Lebioda, minus 115 over Chris Kirk. Fantastic form for Hank as of late. Tied for 5th at the Travelers. Tied for 4th at the Rocket Mortgage. Tied for 8th at the John Deere. Not only that, 34th or better both times he's been in this event. Chris Kirk, not very good as of late. 4 of his last 7 events, he has missed the cut. So we will be betting against him while betting on Hank Lebioda, minus 115 to win tomorrow's matchup.
Mito Pereira,
From
of Chilean descent.
Chilean.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Mom, for texting that to me, by the way.
Is that really how you got that?
I looked it up, but then I got a text from her at the same time, like, I don't have an internet machine here, Mom, to do that.
Making my mom.
But I love you.
Lazy.
I love you, Mom.
All right. Thank you very much. We have great viewers. If only one of them has a direct access to our cell phones, we appreciate it regardless.
Don't they have to watch for us to remain their favorite sons?
You can come off and have the worst show of your life. You're like, I thought you sounded really good. It's
I
was an
love your
idiot.
shoes today, honey.
Thank you, Mom. I love you. All right, before I let you go, one final bet before we're on our way out the door. What do you got?
Mom's really gonna hate this. Mom, I'm taking the Cubs money line against our St. Louis Cardinals tonight, plus
how
115.
can you do it?
It's the Kyle Hendricks experience. In his career against the Redbirds, 12-3 with a 2.82 ERA. Those numbers even better at Busch Stadium, where tonight's game is. 5-1 with a 2.73 ERA, and the Cubs have won 7 out of 10 against the Redbirds this season. They have dominated St. Louis.
You and I are going to be opposed on that game. I like Wainwright and the Cardinals tonight, minus 125. That's not what we're doing right now, but we might as well have some action with one another. I am going to look to a college football future. I cannot bang the drum on this one enough. The Buffalo Bulls, not Bills, Bulls, college football. I want you to play under 8 wins for their season win total. I cannot believe this has not dropped to 7.5 or 7. I don't know what's happening here. When Les Miles got unceremoniously run out of Kansas, they hired the Buffalo head coach, and he took the entire coaching staff with him. And this wasn't a hire like in January. This was a late process because of what happened with Miles. In addition, 10 players entered the transfer portal as a result of that. The new head coach, Maurice Linguist, was coaching the defensive backs of the Dallas Cowboys last year. And Buffalo's a good team, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. I mean, for a head coach who hasn't been recruiting, he coached DBs last year. He's never been the head coach before. He could be good, but it's going to be tough to win 9 games for us to lose that bet. That's Tyler Fulghum. I'm Joe Fortenbaugh. Thank you for tuning in. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can catch us tonight as well. ESPN 2, Daily Wager, 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much.